You're enjoying Racing World. It's brought to you by Perspective Group. It's your global motorsport podcast show brought to you in conjunction with Race Control Magazine.
Well, welcome to another edition of Racing World, show 2 for the year already, but boy oh boy, what an amazing weekend of motorsport there was just around the world really. It was something happening pretty much everywhere. Don't even really know where to start other than the fact that our main things in this show today will be looking at the IndyCar race in Texas and of course F1 and its opening Grand Prix of the year. But looking first of all, before we get into it, Kiwis in motorsport. And I know for global viewers you may not be quite so interested, but let's just cover this off anyway. Kiwis in motorsport over the weekend. In the Sebring 12-hour, Earl Bamber taking a win for the Ganassi team in the Cadillac, followed by Brendan Hartley second in the Toyota. So a Kiwi 1-2 of sorts in the 12-hour race at Sebring. Fabian Coulthard taking a win in TCR in Australia at Phillip Island. Big move for Fabian after being in the main game of V8 Supercars to be in the TCR, but great to see him back on the top step of the podium again. So there was plenty happening, plenty more Kiwis in action as well, and we're going to get through those during the show. Once again, I'd like to thank you very much for liking, sharing, subscribing to the show. And if you don't, well, now's your chance. Just click on that subscribe button and you're in business. And of course, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, all of those various audio platforms, then I hope you're enjoying the listen as you go about your routine or doing whatever it is as you listen to us as you go. Right, to IndyCar, round 2, Texas Motor Speedway. They say things are bigger in Texas. Well, she's a big old place, the Texas circuit, that's for sure. Lots of issues still about the PJ1 surface left over from NASCAR, which has been down now for a few years. Taking that second groove in the track to another level, it changes the grip level. Not so good for IndyCars, kind of doesn't really create a good two-lane racetrack for them. And it's just a byproduct of the fact that it's a surface that you put down and it doesn't go away in a hurry. However, Firestone and IndyCar did run an additional practice session. We'll have a little bit more about that in a minute. But to look at going into qualifying and the race weekend, no better Kiwi to catch up with than Scott Dixon.
Decent run in qual, I think. Maybe missed a little bit on gear and then maybe also just downforce level, but it was kind of hard to judge with the first session. But all in all, pretty happy. Hopefully we stay near the pointy end of the field and see what the race brings.
And then, as we mentioned, there was an extra practice session after qualifying. This was a chance that it was put together mainly by IndyCar and Firestone to try and rubber up the PJ1 surface to create a two-lane racetrack. Very good move on their behalf. Commend them for doing it. I don't think that they achieved the ultimate results, but from most drivers' comments, they did. However, there was one thing that happened in that afternoon session on the Saturday afternoon. Jack Harvey had a very, very big accident, and it ultimately took him out of the race on Sunday. The reason for that is the drivers wear a measuring device inside their helmet, their IndyCar mandate, and he exceeded the amount of G-force loading under an accident. Now that's kind of like a concussion precaution. Very smart move. It's been around in IndyCar for quite some time, and IndyCar did not clear him to race. What happens then? Into Santino Ferrucci, back into the Rahal car for that weekend, and Ferrucci stepping up to the mark. He actually said that he thought he'd be at home watching the TV, and all of a sudden he was in a race car. So great to see him back in the car, and of course all the very best to Jack Harvey as he recovers from this, and hope to see him back on the racetrack maybe as early as Long Beach. Another interesting piece of footage that came out of the Harvey accident was actually on board from Callum Ilott. He released this picture, courtesy of Junkos Racing as well, of a piece of debris from Harvey's car coming towards him, and clearly the aero screen really saved him from a big one here. So testimony to the aero screen, and that is a big hunk of debris heading straight at him. Well, to the race at Texas, McLaughlin leading 186 of the 247 laps. But of course, the one that counted was that last one and the run from turn 4 to the finish line. And that's where he got pipped by his teammate, Joesf Newgarden. Other standouts in the race, of course, Marcus Ericsson coming in third for the Ganassi team, and Scott Dixon, of course, in 5th place. So rounding out a good result in the top 5 for 2 of the Ganassi cars. And then, of course, you know, there was Jimmie Johnson, but more on him a little bit later on. The rest of the race, well, it kind of had its moments. There was a few caution periods, nothing that, you know, would majorly stand out. Taco involved in things, and we'll talk to him again a little later on. But the big part of the weekend really was the dominance from McLaughlin. It was a good thing to see. Second time on the oval. We finished there second last year, and it really means that this guy is coming to terms with IndyCar racing Great quote from Joesf Newgarden after the race too. I was livid in the car because we had all this traffic around me. The traffic wasn't helping me. Then right when I needed it to help me, it helped me. And of course it did. But, that's racing. McLaughlin gutted, yes, but the series still goes on. And this shows what oval racing can deliver. Let's hope that we go back to Texas next year. I know that it may not be on the calendar next year. There's a lot of talk about returning to the Milwaukee Mile. I'd like to see Texas there, but we've got to get fans in the seats to make that happen. The rest of the race kind of played its way out. There wasn't really a lot of caution periods of any significance. There were some minor ones, but that's part of oval racing. But in the end, the other big factor of the day was it was the 600th win for Team Penske. Across all the categories that Roger is in, this was the 600. And what did he do after the race? He gave the race winner, Joesf Newgarden, $600 in US cash. Well, a nail-biter finish. I've seen a few nail-biters over the years, particularly remember a few back at the Chicagoland Raceway that involved Dixon and Franchitti over the years, and of course my dear friend Dan Weldon. But Joesf Newgarden nailing it at the end, and a massive adrenaline rush for him on this one, and you could just reflect that when we got to speak to him at the press conference.
I'm telling you, I was yelling. I was on the radio way before the line, which is, I don't normally do that. You don't do that. You stay in the race, and I was just so pumped up that one, the car was sticking. I wasn't flying towards the fence. I'm like, I think this is going to work out. But I've never had a race, end that way. I've never been in a position to capitalize on that type of victory. So I was really excited. I still really am. That's one of the coolest wins. I think that's probably the coolest win I've ever had on the 2-car. So hopefully, we have more of those, but yeah, really, really neat to be a part of that.
Now, Joesf, a lot of New Zealanders are going to be going, that was Scott McLaughlin's race to have. Did Scott actually do anything wrong in your eyes, or is just this the way it played out?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I think Scott didn't do anything wrong. I took a risk. I mean, I took a big risk there at the end. I just held it in 3-4 to see if it would work. And if it didn't work, it was going to be on me that I took a risk and it didn't work out. And I made that in a very split-second decision. I mean, I'm serious when I say I was pretty much conceding with a lap and a half to go. It was just kind of was going to be what it was going to be. I wasn't in position correctly for that final stint. But I just went for it, and I think, he didn't do anything wrong. He was up on traffic. He was getting very loose. I was a little stronger than him at the end for sure. So I think it would be unwise. It actually just shows his wisdom. It would have been very unwise for him to just take a flyer and go high side without knowing what's going to happen. He won the first race. He's leading the championship. That would have been silly for him to do that decision. For me, it was a risk, but I think it was somewhat calculated. I saw people going up there towards, the beginning of the race, middle of the race. So I took a calculated risk and it worked out.
Another phenomenal performance from Scott McLaughlin. Really great to see him there. I just gobsmacked, really, the fact that we've seen 2 very consistent races, and he's got a nice little points buffer in the points table, which we'll look at shortly. But, it's just a great way to start the season. It cements everything that Penske believed in him, and it was great to catch up with him also at the press conference.
One question from David Turner for you, Scott. He says, 1 year on now at Texas, how is racing on an oval now compared to, coming in as a rookie?
Oh, no, it's awesome. I enjoy oval racing. I wouldn't say I prefer it. I mean, I love just IndyCar racing, but like I said yesterday, IndyCar racing is oval racing, and I love it. I enjoy it. I learned off this guy last year, Will as well, Simon. Had some really good teachers that got me comfortable on the ovals and where I want the setup and where I want to go. And I feel like now I'm sort of going my way a little bit with the setup, which is, I think, helping the team overall as well. So, yeah, look, I love it. I love it. And I can't wait for more of it. Can't wait for May. I think as a team, we're going to have a pretty strong race car. So very exciting.
Scott, the other question for you here, of course, is did the end of the race kind of play out how you thought it was going to, or was there something that you could have done? What was going through your mind at the time?
Looking back at it, if I could think about it and run it through my head, which I already have done a million times, my car was tightening up, especially in traffic, and it probably wasn't handling exactly how I had at the start earlier in the race. And I was sort of maxed out on my tools, and I was trying to control the traffic so I didn't catch the traffic too much. And then in the end, the traffic actually checked up into me, and I knew it was going to be dramas going 3 and 4, but the whole last stint, I really struggled with my turn at 3 and 4. And I guess I wasn't prepared to take the risk on the outside at 3-4, which I probably, looking back at it, should have. But my teammate. Obviously Joesf chose to, and once he was the only outside of me, I can't do anything. So yeah, look, I'm gutted, and I'll reevaluate everything over the next few days. And but it's funny, like last year I was fist pumping and jumping out of the car, finishing second. Today I'm like, oh, that sucks. But that's how it is, and that's how we're growing. And I'll learn from this and get better. And I probably just need to, expand, like maybe risk a little bit more when I need to, or try different lines here and there. And I'll learn that for the big one coming up in May. But one thing today was great, 600 wins for the captain. If anyone's going to beat me, it's my teammate. It's literally like, if anyone else beat me, I would be pissed. So I'm kind of pissed now, but you know what I mean. But 600 wins for the team. We led a lot of laps. We extend the championship lead, and it's not all too bad. So, but yeah, I'm a race driver. I want to win, and it definitely hurts.
Right now on Racing World, we take a look back at some of the other drivers that featured in the series. And once again, very big thanks to Penske Entertainment Corp and IndyCar Media for enabling us to get these interviews, helping and assisting us with these interviews. I know it means a lot to me personally. Hopefully it does to you if you're watching it. But equally, we'd like to thank both Penske Entertainment and IndyCar for helping them out. So next up on our list, Will Power. We caught up with him after the race. 4th overall in the race, a Penske 1-2-4. Not a bad finish. Will now the only driver, of course, not to win a race, but we've only had 2, so let's see what happens when they get to Long Beach.
Well, that's Texas. Pretty good day for the team. 600th win. Big congrats to Joesf Newgarden. And Scott McLaughlin had a great battle at the end there. I was really happy to finish 4th and sitting really nice at the points and just having a very consistent start of the season. So very happy with the Verizon car, very happy with Chevy, and I think we're going to be knocking on the door here for a win.
Perhaps moving on to the other man of the hour, and that was Jimmie Johnson. Everyone's been talking about Jimmie Johnson for the last 18 months. Jimmie Johnson. And finally, really, Jimmie was back in an environment that most suited him. He'd won there many, many times in a cup car on the high banks at Texas. And this was a chance to really see whether or not IndyCar and Jimmie Johnson get on. The answer, yes, they do. He was just phenomenal. He had good qualifying. I think there was probably a bit more in it, but he played maybe a slightly conservative game, got in the race. But to have that Ganassi car up and finishing in 6th place was amazing testimony to Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I'm happy with a couple to go. I was in 5th. And then we were worried about fuel. We had an issue with the telemetry and didn't know how much fuel I had saved. So I got a panicked, fuel number that I had to hit. And I could tell by the urgency in their voice, they were serious about it. So at that point, I couldn't really race with Scott and try to hold on to 5th. But what a 2-day adventure this has been, to be able to get enough laps in the race, to feel the tires from start to finish, green flag stops, being in dirty air, and just how uncomfortable and treacherous that is. All of those little mistakes and little moments gave me a sense of the car and helped me feel, really how to drive this car and how to create speed. And then, second half of the race, I started working my way forward. That final stint, had a very competitive car, and wish that I had maybe started the race a little further forward. I think I could have finished a little further forward.
Well, Jimmie, of course, everybody's going to ask the question now. You've done well at this oval. There's many other ovals to come. And, of course, the big one that's coming up is a certain oval in Indianapolis. How do you think those ovals are going to go?
I think today, just showed what the 48 car is capable of. I mean, we all know what the Chip Ganassi cars are capable of. I just haven't been fast enough on the street and road courses to put the car in that window and get the results. So to be here on a track that I know, in an environment that I know, I was able to provide and do that for the team. So I feel very excited about it and very encouraged about the remaining oval races that are on the books. So I know I'm going to have a great car.
Current series champ Alex Palou next up. Well, Alex had a slightly mixed bag weekend, really. He was still, very much at the front end of the field, but kind of seemed to struggle amongst the Penske cars. 7th overall, but it was a great team result for Alex.
Hey guys, race done here in Texas. It was a good day for the team. We got 4 cars in the top 7, so really happy about that. Marcus got the first podium of the season, and Jimmie got the first top 10 of the season, so super happy. Our race was not as good. We were struggling a little bit, but we started 11th, finished at P7, so the crew did an amazing job. Everybody back at the shop as well. So yeah, we'll make sure that we make the number 10 NGT data on the car on the top on the next race.
Then the man that was lying on the couch on a Friday and Saturday afternoon, suddenly in a car on Sunday at Texas, Santino Ferrucci, seen in New Zealand a few years ago in the Toyota Racing Series, been in and out of IndyCar as well, one that I think has a lot of skill around the ovals particularly. We've seen some pretty bizarre moves from him around Indy, very Rossi-like around Indy up on the outside high groove. So it was great to see Santino back in the car and the best finisher of the Rahal cars in 9th.
All right, guys, there you have it. From last to 9th. I mean, considering I was going to be racing my couch today, I'm pretty happy to be racing for Rahal in the Hy-Vee Honda. Man, got 6 laps of warm-up this morning in a seat that wasn't mine, couldn't see over the steering wheel. That was fun. Strapped in for the race, and it was the full send from there. Can't be more happy with how everything turned out, and it was a lot of fun, so thanks.
Someone we spoke to last week, and great to see him back in the series, and of course is always remembered for that last lap at Indy, but there's more to JR Hildebrand than that. Fantastic to see him in the Foyt car. They kind of struggled a little bit in qualifying, didn't qualify too well, but JR just put in a steady, solid race all day, worked his way back up the field, and I think being in the oval seat for all the oval races this year for the Foyt team will be a great thing, and it's great to see a good 14th place finish for JR.
All right, JR here after a pretty long day at the track, but happy for the guys, happy for the number 11 Rocket Chevy. It was a day of sort of patience and perseverance for us. At times the car was actually really racy, which was awesome to feel out. Not just on new tires, but at moments in the race throughout the stints, the car was actually really good, and we were able to make some forward progress. Be tight off of 2 and go back a good run off onto the back straight, get a good run through 3 and 4. Definitely felt racy. Had good pit stops. We were actually, I think we were one of the longest cars on the first stint, so our strategy was go as long as possible, try to make this a 3-stop race. The way the cautions fell, everybody that we ended up kind of all on the same program, but to come away where we did at the end of the day, it's definitely a good fight back from yesterday for us. And on the oval racing side, a little bit of good prep for Indy, and for the 11 crew, good prep for the next one down the road on the road courses.
Now looking at some of the others that maybe their weekends didn't turn out quite so well. Start out with Sato. Very mixed day for Sato. He was up there in the top 3 for the first quarter of the race, and fantastic for Sato, fantastic for Dale Coyne Racing. It was really looking like something was just, they'd ticked a lot of boxes, and this was something that when you put Taco in a situation like that, you can almost expect that he's going to convert it. But then things went a little sour. They pitted at the same time as their teammate. They got held up in the pits. It meant Sato was slow out, and then when he came back onto the track, it kind of put him in the wrong place. He was in amongst cars that he didn't really deserve to be in, which involved him rubbing against the wall, and in the end it made for a downward spiral for Taku for the rest of the day.
So we had a mixture feeling, obviously disappointed not to finish the race, but David made a quite exciting race, which was good for the team, but we had a very fast car today. At the start we weren't very good, but then I was immediately back up my position from 5th to 3rd, and then stretched this first stint, so Scott had to dive in due to fuel, and then I overtook Felix, who was leading at that time, but our tire management was better, so then read the race on the perfect first stint. You can't really explain it better than this, but unfortunately we next to the teammate on the pit box, and we had a little issue, and then unfortunately I couldn't come into the box because it was blocked, so we lost a significant position, and then second stint on the way back to my position, unfortunately I was side by side with Di Francesco, and he had a moment and he had come up, and then we had a touch contact, and then I damaged on my suspension, so very unfortunate, but the team did a fantastic job over the course of the weekend, and very excited. Next is Long Beach, so it's going to be refreshed, and then we will try our best again.
Now to 2 guys that we thought probably should have done better than what they did. Graham Rahal first up, finished 22nd overall, taken out in a 3-car accident with Devlin D'Anfrancesco and Elio Castroneves. One of those races, it's very hard on the rookie. He stood up to the plate and owned it, which is fantastic. But the bigger picture with Rahals is the fact that, Graham struggled to get into the race. Obviously the problems with Jack Harvey, it just wasn't quite clicking. But in the end, not the result that Rahals were looking for.
Disappointing end to our day here in Texas. Had made quite a move forward. I thought things were shaping up pretty good to battle here at the end, but these things happen. Obviously frustrated to be in that scenario, being a little bit cautious on the start. But I thought, we gave him room. I need to see it. But third man in needs to be first man out. I was trying to give Elio room on top too. Being stuck in the middle was a little tough. So, we're going to soldier on here. I feel bad for the team and Fleet Cost and Karen, everybody that worked awfully hard to get us here. But it's part of the game, unfortunately. We've dug ourselves quite a hole here in points, so we're going to have to put our heads down and battle forward.
And then to the latest member of the four-time club, Elio Castroneves, taken out also in this accident, finishing 23rd. Certainly, Elio had a bit of a view on it, and he has some very valid points. But at the end of the day, DeFrancesco did own this accident. It was a rookie mistake. Not the sort of thing that you're going to do again, but overall it also made for a bad weekend for the Andretti Autosport entries. But for Elio, yeah, disappointing in the end.
Understand that when the third guy goes in late corner, he should be the first one out. And in this situation, obviously there was a contact between those two guys in the bottom. 100 laps to go, I think it's unnecessary to take a risk like that. I understand it would be like 5 laps to go, 10, 50 laps to go, but it's still a long race, and especially the stadium that here's a place that 3 wide is very difficult. Got to be a little bit more responsible. That's what happens. You got to take care of each other. But in the end of the day, we end up getting the worst of it because we're just outside, and that's what happened.
Texas race, been and gone for another year. Next stop, Long Beach around the streets, then Alabama for the road course, and then the month of May starts with the Grand Prix at Indianapolis, followed, of course, by that magic race, the 106th running of the Indy 500. And I can tell you now that Racing World and Race Control magazine will be at Indy for the month of May, and there's a lot coming for you, so look out for that. But looking back at Long Beach, looking back at Texas rather, and where we stand now, Scott McLaughlin now clearly our points leader with 97 points. He's got quite a buffer now over Will Power, who's down in 69, and then Alex Palau in 67, Joesf Newgarden in 65, Marcus Ericsson in 58, and Dixie in 55. So that top 6, there's a little bit of a spread there, but we're going to see some things develop. But certainly McLaughlin picking up the extra 3 points for laps led, they all count, and this is the way you win championships. So McLaughlin's off to a great start, but it means nothing when we get to Long Beach. So let's wait and see what happens around the streets of downtown Long Beach. Certainly a very brilliant circuit, one that I like very much, and of course the food trucks there are absolutely amazing. Just before we leave the Indy part of the show, the other thing to talk about, of course, is this 106 running of the Indy 500. I said quite some time ago last year in the show that I was expecting there to be 35, 36 cars. At the moment, there are 32 cars confirmed for the Indy 500, and it's looking like that might be the threshold. I'm sure we'll get the 33, but will we get more than that? There seems to be some doubt now, which is kind of disappointing. The reasons behind it, we're missing 2 full-time Carlin cars at the moment. They're not in the series at the moment, so that's one thing. More cars are racing in the series permanently, which has meant that the funding is it's spread across multiple areas, so we're not seeing it just go into Indy entries. When you have 27 cars at a Texas race, it's saying something. So that's diluted it a little bit. There's a couple of teams sitting on the outside at the moment, but they're going to have to pretty much pull finger now. It's getting very close to that month of May, that's for sure, to get them into the field. It's a little disappointing, but I think in the end of the day, we're probably going to see maybe 34, 35 cars. I still think that will happen. Some things are going to come out of the woodwork. Stefan Wilson has 100% funding. He's just got to find a team to go with. So I'm sure someone will step up to the plate and take his money, because that's how motor racing works. So the month of May is just around the corner. And as I said, Racing World will be there. We'll be there on Fast Friday. We'll be there on Pole Day. We'll be there on Qualifying Day. We'll be there on Carb Day. And we'll be there for the 106th running of the Indy 500. Well, we'll spin around the world now, and hopefully in the coming weeks we'll be catching back up with Bob to talk more Formula One in depth. But the first Grand Prix of the year in the new 2022 spec cars took place at Bahrain. Now, the teams had tested there, so I still don't read a lot into this because there's been a lot of mileage around Bahrain. But what did we see? We saw a Ferrari 1-2 Charles Leclerc from Carlos Sainz, so great off-season form was carried through to the race. Will it continue? Well, it's certainly a very, very different circuit when we go to Saudi this coming weekend, and anything's possible. Standouts in the race, obviously the failure from Red Bull of both their cars. That's something that's not going to please the team. Certainly also a very frustrated Max Verstappen. So that's racing. You win, you lose. You've got to take it on the chin. Remarkable performance from the Mercedes cars. To think that Lewis Hamilton was actually on the podium as well, and George Russell tucked in just behind him. Have we seen Mercedes come out the other side of this? No, we haven't. But they were there to inherit race finish points, and they got them, and Lewis took that third step on the podium. Of course, the big thing that everyone is talking about, Haas, and a great 5th place finish for Kevin Magnussen, who just 2 weeks ago wasn't even going to be in the car, and here he was back with his old team and finishing well in the points. These points mean massive amounts to a team. It's worth prize money that goes into the travel fund, keeps the teams going. To just score points in that first race is like winning a world championship for Haas right now, and you can certainly see it amongst the team. I personally think that Mick Schumacher probably would have been there as well if he hadn't had the early spin in the race with Ocon, but that's the way it goes. But another strong performance for him, and the question mark that I'd had over the team, of course, was reliability, and both cars were reliable and they both finished, which of course the Red Bulls didn't, so Haas certainly had the upper hand there. So in terms of the championship, what it's meant is Charles Leclerc takes an early lead, but of course we're only one race in, followed by Carlos Sainz, so Ferrari on the maximum points as well. Then followed by the 2 silver arrows of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, Kevin Magnussen in that Haas that we've talked about, Valtteri Bottas just sneaking in for a 6th place finish, and I think that's quite remarkable. Hadn't done a lot of mileage in the car during testing and then brings the car home, so the Alfa's certainly got some pace in it, that's for sure. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, Tsunoda in the Alfa Tauri, Alonso in the Alpine, and then rounding out the top 10, making his debut start, and also in the other Alfa, Guan Yu Zhou. So great to see him step up from F2, China's first ever F1 driver, and now scoring his first ever F1 points. As I said, the series moves on to Saudi Arabia next week, the return to the Jeddah circuit. We all know that had plenty of dramas last year, so I think we're probably in for more again this year. Then also at Bahrain was the F2 Championship, and for New Zealand viewers or listeners again, 2 Kiwis in this. Liam Lawson, obviously with the Carlin Red Bull squad this year, and Marcus Armstrong swapping teams as well. Great performances from both of them. Lawson did a great job. He's now sitting 2nd in the championship as well after both the sprint race and the feature race. And Marcus, again, very strong performance from Marcus considering some of the troubles he had last year, so great to see him up there. Overall, he's 7th in the table, had a 5th place finish as well, but 7th in the championship. This is the type of confidence booster I think that Marcus needed. Liam Lawson clearly on a good streak right now. He's only a point behind the championship leader, so we're in for more things out of the F2 season, and it'll be great to see how that plays itself out with these 2 Kiwis. Well, that pretty much wraps up things for another edition of Racing World. Next week we'll be talking Speedway, the final meeting at Western Springs Speedway for the season, Legends Nights as it's called, named after the great Barry Butterworth, and many other drivers. We'll be catching up with Graham Sandring, Nick Brown and Alistair Wooten, all members of the commentary team at Western Springs Speedway, to look back at what has been a pretty phenomenal Speedway season. And of course there's F1 from Saudi Arabia. That's all on Racing World. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you again next week. Don't forget, like, share and subscribe. Really, really important, so we really value that. We look forward to bringing you so much more this season.